Hi everyone, Dr. Nemechek here, and I want to go over another one of our series of discussions about some of the papers in the literature, how you put that together to understand what's happening with everybody. And one of the important things for everybody to know is this concept of SIBO. SIBO means Small Intestinal Bacterial Overgrowth. So this graphic here shows pretty much how your gut is balanced. We got stomach, flows into the small intestine, into the large intestine. And these birds represent these groupings of bacteria. They live up here. These guys live down, the fish live down here. The ratio is about 1 to 100 million. They'll use the phrase often almost sterile to describe the small intestine. And then you have about 4 trillion bacteria in the colon. So the problem we're having that's developing throughout the population, and we don't know exactly why this is happening, but is SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. In essence, you have normal bacteria in the wrong place. You'll have 10,000 to 100,000 times the bacteria up there. The small intestine is not built for it, and literally stuff will leak through the seams into the surrounding tissue, and that causes a massive inflammatory reaction. Okay, in the area right around the small intestine, you have about 70% of your white blood cells just sitting right there. So when you leak, you're leaking into 70% of the immune system. Those white blood cells are going to react to anything that's not your tissue type, and then these inflammatory cytokines here, these are chemicals released by the white blood cells, get in the bloodstream, cause havoc, body doesn't work right, triggers and fuels all sorts of illnesses, and I'll show you a list of the things now that are being linked to SIBO. But what I want to talk about in particular is how overgrowth affects the brain so that you can't recover from injuries correctly, okay? And one of the key things here that is a long-term issue is the leakage of what's called LPS. LPS means Lipopolysaccharidide. And LPS is just a molecule on the outside of fish bacteria. And when they divide, it's kind of little dust-like particles are released and are floating around. So it's not like a poison or a toxin that's released. It's just a byproduct of replicating these fish bacteria, or what we call their gram-negative rods. And it's kind of like a carpenter who's building furniture. You always got sawdust. It's just a byproduct of making furniture and cutting wood. Well, LPS is just the byproduct of making new bacteria. So it's kind of bacterial sawdust. Now, down here normally in the large intestine, there is no leaky gut, so it never gets in the bloodstream. It's only when you have this excess bacteria up here, and you've breached the barrier, and now LPS can get outside the intestinal tract, can make its way into the bloodstream, will flow throughout the body, and in particular can get to the brain. Okay, and this changes how the brain is able to function. Now, here is a critically important paper from 2013. There's several points in my life where I can remember exactly where I was when something happened. And so, like, I remember laying across the foot of my parents' bed when Neil Armstrong first walked on the moon. I can remember seeing the shuttle explode. I know where I was when I heard about Princess Diana's death or 9/11. And I remember exactly where I was when I read this paper. It was so important. It brought together so many things that I want to share it with you. So what Cunningham did here is basically he takes mice and he's going to mimic SIBO overgrowth. But what he does is he injects the mice with LPS. Okay, now here is the white mouse. So we're going to give him a concussion, but there's no LPS. And this is basically how a human's brain should recover. And so there's different kinds of concussions you can get, and he was using some material to trigger an inflammatory concussion. And so as you go along, and then he gave them a concussion. As this deflects down, that's a worsening score on the brain. And so they were looking at balance, swimming, and if the mouse could remember a food maze. And so the function's worse. The mouse isn't doing well. They take some of the mice, they look at the brains. There's actually damage from this. So it's substantial. But the important thing here is, and this is how humans are designed, is within 2 weeks they recover. We're supposed to recover too. Okay? And get another injury, full recovery, another injury, full recovery. That's what a normal brain does. Now, these are injuries where neurons are damaged, but there's no bleeding in the brain. Okay, so if you get a concussion, they do a CAT scan, there should be no bleeding. All right? Now, black mouse. This is a mouse where we're going to give them the same injury, but what they did is they inject LPS into the bloodstream. Well, actually, they inject it in the belly. It's got to leak out. It's got to find its way into the bloodstream. It's got to find its way into the brain. And it comes in contact with these special white blood cells, okay, called microglia. And the microglia normally are what repaired the brain in the white mouse, okay? And the microglia are replaced about every 3 months with new healthy ones, all right? And so what happens is the LPS flows up into the brain, comes in contact with these microglia, and now they don't work correctly. And it's not that they just can't repair, but if you look here with the same injury, boom, the damage is worse. So the microglia are actually magnifying the injuries now. This is what's happening to many people, many humans in the population, okay? And then look what happens. As you start to recover, whoops, you just left some damage behind. Okay? You get another injury. Boom. Now the damage is adding. Try to recover a little bit. Nope, can't recover. And then the third one here in the mouse is catastrophic, as you can see. But this phenomenon where injuries, but you leave a little bit of damage behind. Another injury, a little bit of damage behind. And that starts growing. Boom, 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 boom. All right? This is called cumulative brain injury. Another term for it now that's being used is minor repetitive traumatic brain injury. And this is starting to be linked with a variety of neurological conditions. There's data building that this is in part what's building up to give people Alzheimer's, for instance. Okay? And so you have these three types of injuries that are happening in the general population. Physical ones, you hit your head on the hatch of the car, you slip and hit your head in the bathroom or something like that. Car wrecks. Emotional traumas, so these are intense, often threatening type of traumas. Abuse, you're held at gunpoint, a loved one dies. And then inflammatory concussions. And this is the release, a spiking release of chemicals such as from surgeries, bad fractures, COVID, and so forth. So any of these can give you an injury. Now we're understanding. And if you've had SIBO once, and this is leaked out into the brain, okay, you're going to end up not being able to repair. And this is kind of what happens. So this blue line represents normal recovery, okay? And look, so here's a physical, emotional trauma, the inflammatory, here, COVID vaccines, more inflammatory things. And what happens is, so people get an injury when they've had SIBO, and they feel like they've kind of recovered. But the thing is, they didn't recover all the way. They aren't quite perfect. And they get another one. And now you can see the damage building. See it? It's getting greater. Surgery. Okay? You just get your gallbladder out. Boom. Concussion. Okay? Builds. COVID now. Repeated COVID injuries. This is just boom, 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 boom on top of each other. Okay? This is what's going on in the population. Let me show you how the protocol is designed to address this. Okay. We got a lot going on here. I apologize, but just focus over here first. Here's white mouse, okay? White mouse. That's the mouse that recovers after every injury, okay? That's what a normal human should do. So what happens here? White mouse, these microglia, they're hanging out, waiting for repair. They see some damage. These cells will change their behavior. It's not different cells. These different tools pop out on the outside of the cells, and they turn into what we call an M1. It's very healthy. This is actually inflammatory in a healthy way. It's a short-term thing, cleans up all this debris from these damaged cells. Then the M1 turns into an M2, which is now a different set of tools come on the outside. This is a repair cell that works with stem cells and other astrocytes and things to help repair the damage of your neurons. And then when it's done, it goes back to this surveillance kind of mode, all right, where it's just hanging out waiting for the next injury. Every 3 months, brand new microglia. Now, here's what's going on. So you get LPS from bacterial overgrowth, the fish living up with the birds. That's that stuff. And now that's the black mice, okay? Getting these worse injuries here, okay? And the way that's happening is LPS triggers and makes this, what we call M0 microglia, turn into a primed M1 microglia, all right? Priming is a bad word, all right? This is red, like this guy down here is an M1, but he's healthy and he's not primed. He's temporary. The LPS leaks out and causes this guy to become a primed M1 microglia. What that means is this guy doesn't really fix anything, and what he's doing is he's spitting out these harmful inflammatory chemicals right on the brain. So not only do you get inflammation now coming from the gut that leaks into the brain, these chemicals here, you're having it produced within the brain by these cells, okay? And these chemicals are the things that magnify the damage, and they get in the way of stem cells and neurotropins and things, and you can't fully repair your brain. More damage, less recovery. More damage, less recovery. That's what we see right here. More damage, less recovery. More damage, less recovery. All right? The problem is, even if you take rifaximin and you fix your bacterial overgrowth, these white blood cells, they become immortal. They will never go away. There's a lot of work on this, trying to figure out how to do this. And they've shown this is, I mentioned, contributes to Alzheimer's. They've gone in, looked at these cells in Alzheimer's brain tissue, and you can carbon date them like something maybe like an archaeological dig. And what they find is these tend to be 40 or 50 years old. That's when the process for Alzheimer's starts. That's how far ahead this started. They had SIBO 40 or 50 years before they develop Alzheimer's. All right? And so we don't know how to make them go away, but fortunately, there's some things we can do. Now, this guy in his normal healthy state, the only thing he can do is turn into a healthy M2. All right? And so researchers have discovered things like the omega-3 DHA, extra virgin olive oil, and then the vagus nerve stimulator. They all force this guy, this M1, to behave like an M2. You can keep him. You can just reset his behavior and keep him in that position. But the thing is, and that's why, especially the VNS and the DHA, that's why I put them in the protocol for this specific reason. But the problem is, if you stop those things, he slingshots back basically and becomes inflammatory again, right in the same place before, and some of your prior injuries will slowly start coming back. So that's where at this point, there is no like cure of this. This is long-term management for the time being. Okay, we fix SIBO because you got leaky gut here, and that's contributing to this inflammatory stuff. So we fix that, make that go away. And then we have the fish oil, olive oil, the vagostimulator to take this guy who's making inflammatory stress right within the brain and hold him down in this healthy repair mode. Okay, that's how all of these pieces work. I should add over here, here's the linoleic acid from vegetable oils and so forth. Okay, the olive oil prevents that from, has additional effect of preventing that from adding to the whole inflammatory stress. So this is how all these little pieces come together. All right, and basically when you do this, when I have patients here who are acting like black mice, they've had this injuries building up, your brain will start to repair and you'll start functioning like a white mouse. But it's important, the fish oil and olive oil, and often if we needed the vagal stimulator, all those need to be continued in the long term to keep you there. Okay, and long term, 6-10 years. It might be that long because they're working on how to get rid of those prime microglia. Who's involved with this? How many people? Well, this table has a list of all the disorders that are now linked with SIBO. So we've got here all these intestinal things, Crohn's, also have colitis, fatty liver disease, here heart failure, heart disease, atherosclerosis, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, autism, depression, anxiety, here's several cancers, so forth. All of these patients, their conditions being worsened by the overgrowth and the inflammation from SIBO, and they are all at risk of having additional neurological problems down the road from these microglia in the brain. Okay, so that's where all of this comes together. Okay, I will put links to these papers that I'm showing you here in the description below this video. And again, Nemechek protocol, balancing the intestinal tract with inulin or rifaximin in adults in particular, daily omega-3s, which are, give you the DHA that goes into the brain and can help control that prime microglia. The olive oil does the same. Then the olive oil also protects you from inflammation developing due to these grain-based cooking oils, as well as the saturated fats like palmitic acid, and then vagus nerve stimulation to help further lower the inflammation. That's how the whole thing works. So hope that's helpful to everybody. Otherwise, everybody have a great day. Take care.